Hello, hello, and welcome, friends. Welcome to another episode of Dust James Anti-Imperialist America. I believe this is the 30 episode. I'm coming to you back. I believe it's Tuesday. It's hard to tell. I already did one on Saturday. Um, I went through a lot last 2, 3 days. Figured I'd go ahead and come back with y'all. One of the first things I missed, I did one on Saturday. I did a live on Saturday. I did not mention that Saturday was the 50th anniversary of the Chicano moratorium, and that is a huge anniversary. And a big shout out to the friends and comrades at Telehagwire for broadcasting that live. They broadcast that live in 3 parts. I got 2 of them up on my page and my channel. Amazing organizing, amazing speeches, marches, caravan, just beautiful event. The history behind the 50th anniversary of the Chicano moratorium. Um, that's largest anti-war demonstration in U.S. history. Working class men from an oppressed nation. Um, Absolutely beautiful. Um, let's see. So, and it's particularly special to me individually. I don't go over this part of my history a lot. I think I'll go over um, why. So, I grew up in a broken home. Everybody wanted to get out of my household. It was dirty, messy, fighting. Everyone kind of wanted to escape, and I kind of escaped. I usually liked to hang around my ex-girlfriend at the time, and she was immigrant from Mexico, and I really fell in love with her family and was really partly raised by her family. And her mom was from Guerrero, and they lived in a trailer park, and everybody in that trailer park was from Guerrero. And I spoke Spanish. I drank at an earlier age with folks in the alley, heard stories of Mexico. My favorite pair of shoes are huaraches from southern Mexico, these sandals. Um, and it was just, I was just kind of part of the community for years. Um, it's part of and it's very collective culture, very rich and deep culture, food, celebrations, like a lot of the stuff we've lost here in the United States. I think a lot of migrants have retained, regardless of how poor they pool their money together. And it was just, they basically partly raised me. Undocumented folks from Guerrero mostly worked in the chicken plant, which I worked in the chicken plant for a bit, basically partly raised me. I got into college, I did some activism. I actually tried to form, because I saw I worked with, I learned Marxist Leninism, learned about the national question. Figured, well, I can organize around this. It's part of the community I'm part of. And I actually tried to start a chapter of the Brown Berets, probably one of the, and I was actually accepted, which was interesting. I'm probably one of the only white members accepted to the Brown Berets. but under the condition that my girlfriend would lead that chapter of the Brown Berets, and she was involved with school, and she said she had some doubts about it. She ended up not doing it. She didn't agree to it, so it's like, okay, can't do that. And then I actually tried. My contact introduced me really Chicano nationalism, Ernesto. I actually tried to. I had a phone conversation, and I actually tried to get a chapter of Partidas Unidas started. And that really fall through. That didn't really go work. I've always been more of a theorist than an organizer. I've done some organizing. I've built some coalitions, but a lot of attempts fell through. This is one of them. Uh, but interesting history. So Chicano moratorium, and reason why I have so much respect for the Telly Hagwai organization and Ernesto really goes back to some of my lived experiences and people I've been around and seen, and the idea. I think Ernesto's dad did an interview, which I shared out on my page. It was really good. Um, Beautiful story, just encyclopedic knowledge. What he went through, what Ernesto's dad went through the 70s. Um, wow. And one of the things that really touched me about the interview was he was like, join an organization. You can't do it by yourself. And that's actually some of the criticism. When I talked with Ernesto's dad once on Messenger, he was very critical of me. He says, well, he's not really part of the community or more of an individual. And I think that's always stuck with me. I think he was right about that. And one of the things he was putting out in that interview was join an organization, which is interesting. To me, in my current case, I was with an organization for years. I got out of activism. I've mostly been doing Facebook. I've tried to get back into activism. I've gone to a few demonstrations. I'm doing this YouTube. I built this YouTube from the ground up, building contacts, met and interviewed great people. We have over 400 subscribers. I think it's 420 subscribers. Love to get that up to 500. I don't know about y'all, but I'll do something. Y'all request me to do something and help me get some subscribers, and I'll do it when I hit that that 500 subscribers. Let's see. I'm gonna pull up the Facebook, see if I can see myself live on Facebook. It's the only way to see the comments there. There it goes. Looks like subscribers. Let me turn down the volume on that. All right, cool. Guess that's a good intro. I'll catch up with some of the comments. Shout out to Red. Shout out to Tony Garea. Shout out to Kabir. Red salute. Kale Rayner. And thanks everybody that's watching. If you want me to give a shout out to you, get in the comments. Tell me where you're from. Tell me how you're doing today. Tell me about some of the conditions you're facing as a worker, your ideas, questions. Get in the comments section. It's great to see that. Shout out to Jacob Felzone. All right, so one of the things Ernesto's dad said, join an organization. So me particularly, I'm kind of enjoying my independence. I'm able to I'm brutally honest, straightforward. When you join an organization, you kind of have to, especially a more disciplined organization, there's kind of like a unity to the public. Like you can disagree within the organization, where there's a united front when you're going against the public. And I don't know of an organization that I'm in contact enough that I'd be willing to pay dues, that I can meet on a regular basis. It's hard with my job. I work 70 plus hour weeks, but I think it's absolutely necessary. I do recommend people being part of organizations, even organizations they don't really agree with, from electoral politics to broad social organizations, Communist Party USA, DSA, any of these local chapters, anywhere the people are at with like minds. You can talk with, build with. It's almost like socialism's almost like a church. You can read the Bible all you want and by yourself, but you need fellowship. You got to be around people and see people. Um, I think it's an absolute necessary part and build those real contacts. I mean, I'm having trouble with that in my current situation, but I'd like for that to change. Um, right now, I have some debts to pay off, but eventually, I hope to get like a day cab job. You know. All right. So the next thing that I wanted to speak on was I watched the movement for the People's Party convention. I thought it was particularly interesting. I think it was far superior to either the Democrats or Republicans. Movement for a People's Party. Um, so I think a lot of what the Movement for the People Party are people in and around the Democratic Party, progressives, liberals, who are starting to see the need for a third party and get out of that. It seems to be a broad coalition, and they have they had this convention. It was 5 hours long. It wasn't a week long convention. It was mostly a Zoom interview. Kind of, it was similar. It reminded me a little bit of what Cindy Sheehan did for Women's Day. That was amazing organizing. What Cindy Sheehan did on Women's Day, she had people from women speak from a variety of different. That was a great bit of organizing. But it was kind of like that format. You'd have they had a host, they'd have a speaker go, and so on and so forth. A little bit like the conventions of the RNC and the DNC did. And Movement for a People Party, usually people in and around the Bernie movement, liberals who are starting to see a need of it. Some of them are wanting to vote for Biden still. Some don't, but they all see the need of building independent political organization. Now, that doesn't say they didn't have their faults. I saw red baiting. They had a Gusano on there. They had somebody from Cuba who just talked shit about the revolution, unscientifically against the data, just anti-communism, anti-socialism. That was a part of the movement for New People Party. There was one person on there that praised Bill Gates as a philanthropist. Um, that was messed up. Uh, there was a bunch of stuff I had disagreements on. Okay, so what I think it really showcased for me, particularly Cornel West's speech, um, in that Cornel West, positive figure, and he went over this divide between progressive forces that are telling you to vote for Biden and others who are not. And Cornel West does work with Bob Avakian of RCP, who is promoting that we vote for Biden. They actually had one of the Democratic candidates on there, Marianne Wilson. She did this shame kind of thing, promoting people to vote for Biden. It was rather horrible. And he also mentioned Angela Davis is trying to get people to vote for Biden. I'm starting to think of a list of these people, and then people Cornel West didn't mention, or figures on the internet like Bosch. Um, and then he also mentioned Cornel West said he respects people that are on both sides of the divide. He respects all the people I mentioned, except he didn't mention Bosch. He respects Bob Avakian. He respects Marianne Wilson. He respects Angela Davis. And then the people he's also close with, Cornel West, who are not for voting for Biden, is Ajamu Baraka, Glenn Ford, Margaret Kimberly. These are all forces associated with the Black Alliance for Peace and the Black Agenda Report. Also, Chris Hedges, who actually spoke at this new movement for People's Party, and he actually endorsed Howie Hawkins. He said to people to vote for the Green, and Ajamu Baraka and those forces are also telling people to vote Green as well. Most of the members of the Black Agenda Report are endorsing the Green candidate. Chris Hedges is endorsing the Green candidate. And then outside of the speech, I'm just trying to make a list. Myself, I'm not in favor of voting Biden. When my close contact in the Chicano community, Telly Hagwire, they are militantly against voting for Biden. I just want one of the contacts within Telly Hagwire, Karene Akri Paez, just her story of political development from supporting Bernie Sanders. She was actually formally involved, became dissatisfied with the Movement for People's Party, and now she's from a revolutionary Chicano nationalist perspective, strongly anti-imperialist. Just her political development in a short period of time is absolutely inspiring, that more people can go through that journey and have that journey and go from backing an imperialist to being militantly anti-imperialist within a short time. I know it has to do with really positive figures around her, but her story is absolutely inspired. And I recommend people check out that interview I did with Karena Kripaez. Great interview, inspiring story. Let's see. Another interesting. I wasn't expecting this, but I watch this thing every Sunday. There's this group of older communists who put out a. Okay, there's a group of older communists who, before the COVID, they met in a library in Oakland, and they call themselves the Institute for Critical Study of Society. Institute, for, it has this weird, big sounding name. It's basically a bunch of old Marxists of various tendencies, and they do these amazing, in-depth conversations. And since the COVID, they've been posting them to YouTube. If you're not subscribed to, I think it's ICSS on YouTube, I've shared out their videos. If you're not subscribed to them, subscribe to them. I can't believe they have so little subscribers. They're one of the best in-depth Marxist analysis on the internet, hands down. And they play classical music at the beginning, then they have a presentation, they have a back and forth. And the one that went this time was on policing. And Tony Platt, interesting, did an amazing presentation on the history of policing, starting back all the way from slavery, going up till now. He actually was an activist, I believe, in the 70s and 80s. And a lot of the stuff going around policing, I mean, it's nothing new. I mean, policing is for the benefit of the capitalist. He made a lot of great points, like the overemphasis on private prisons. Private prisons are horrible, and they represent a for-profit system, but they're a very minute portion of the prison system. The prison system's largely public, and it serves the public. It serves the owners of the government, the bourgeoisie, by keeping down, suppressing poor black and brown folks. That is their job. That's what the policing system does. And this happened way before Trump. And Tony Platt actually agrees with me on the issue from a Marxist perspective, from a material perspective. He said that the government under Trump, is not fascism. There is still democratic avenues, and fascism is coming about due to a decline in the imperialist system. As the power of the imperialists dwindle, they lash out. They become more repressive. They're going to be more involved in wars that aren't necessary. and they're going to be doing away with democratic rights here, and they're going to be becoming more, overt, like Trump sending these ICE figures, unmarked police into, which Obama set precedents for. So it's almost like two sides of the same coin. I mean, Trump isn't really a major departure from the general trend um, towards the democratization in the decaying empire of the United States. And one of the Marxists at the Institute for Cultural Study of Society, when he gave his presentation, he came to that conclusion. Okay, so let me go over a few of these comments. Um, Alex Giovanni, hey Dust, I'm watching from Salem, Oregon. I agree about joining organizations. Thanks for your excellent work. Thank you. And shout out to Caleb Moppin. Thanks for joining us. Toi Garea, liberals, social democrats, etc., are not our friends. We need to break away from the idea that ML is just super progressivism. Absolutely correct. Tony Garea, Biden is a total disaster. It's LX. I need to hear her story. Yes, Karina Kripaez, the way she went from supporting Bernie and Imperialist to revolutionary Chicano nationalism in the short period, it's absolutely amazing story. And I interviewed her, which you can find on my channel. Um, Carla Hernandez, my dad played Ruben Salazar on the play The Silver Dollar, Chicano Moratorium. Wow, beautiful. And Chicano Moratorium, um, the largest anti war demonstration from an oppressed nation, working class led, I think is really hope. And you said you saw a reemergence of similar tendencies in the 2006 mobilization, May Day, which really inspired me against fascist legislation under Bush, where Bush was trying to pass a law that would criminalize, make it a felony to help undocumented migrants, to feed them, to clothe them, made it a felony, and the masses of Chicano immigrant Raza population that came out in 2006 was a huge inspiration to me. I was in high school at the time, and I didn't make it out that first to that. I tried to go the next year, ended up getting lost, and I had it tired. I had a bit of an adventure. This really old car. We ended up not making it to Raleigh. Um, I actually was led a chapter of Reform Immigration for America, which is if it says for America, it's from this big Democrat money. Um, it's from this big Democrat money. Anything that says for America, it's imperialist money, trying to pervert and take genuine people's movements, oppressed people's movements, and push them to back the left wing, or simply one of the wings. It's hard to tell sometimes, of the imperialists, and that's largely what the organization did. But I joined that because, like, you should join organizations, do what we can. I did that to build contacts. I was young, and I immediately got kicked out of that organization. I ran Reform Immigration for America, the Greensboro chapter, out of my dorm room. And they came to me, the leaders of the organization, tried to get me business endorsements. Go and get business endorsements. Like, I'm not getting business endorsements. Let's go to the people. Let's get the people's demands. I was kicked out of that rather quickly. And then I tried to do a May Day event, and I tried to tie it in with the organization I helped start, Jobs with Justice, and for tied in with labor issues. And I think there was another contact that said, okay, that's going too far away from that organization. And there was two, they weren't at the same time, but they were almost competing May Day celebrations. And and I took a group of folks up from a small town to go there, and we were real poor. Everybody, we didn't have no money, and then we all ran out of food, and we were all starving. So we didn't actually make it to that second demonstration. We had to go. We had to go back. It, I've been through some stuff. Okay. All right. So let's get down to this divide between a lot of these forces that are backing Biden and some of these forces that aren't. And this is what I'm coming to the perspective of. A lot of these forces that are backing Biden are closer linked to the progressive movement, is Caleb Mopwood would say the protest cage. I think they're closer in with it. They're in with that psyche. That's the terms. That's the vocabulary. Cornel West, Bob Avakian, Angela Davis. They're kind of hooked into this, and then these forces that are opposed to voting for Biden, Black Agenda Report. I think they're coming from a more materialist perspective, and they're closer. They have a closer understanding of the national question. Everyone I see that has a good comprehension of the national question is not voting for Biden. New African Black Panther Party, Telehaguire. These organizations do not support voting for Biden. And I think that's interesting. And there's also a link between Marxist Leninism and those who support Stalin and not voting for Biden. And Stalin was one of the best Marxist theorists on the national question, and I believe also on the imperialist question. A lot of the reasons why these people are saying to vote for Biden is because Trump is a fascist. And, well, I think those claims are wrong, because most of what Trump has implemented, the police repression, we saw, and there was set precedents under Democratic regimes and former Republican regimes, particularly Obama's repression of Occupy Wall Street, repression of Black Lives Matter, repression of Standing Rock was interesting. And that goes beyond. That's part of the national question. The Chicano nationalists see themselves very linked to the Native American struggle, and when they use tear gas against indigenous people, chemical weapons outlawed by international law that shouldn't be used, that's part of the continual genocide of Native people. Along with, I always say, the immigration system and the coup system, the sabotage system, is also part of the continual genocide against Native Americans. So laws like NAFTA, which Biden helped carry out, which Biden helped pass, the Clintons helped pass, I will say this over and over again, impoverished southern Mexico. Mid 90s, late 90s, the land holdings which people were able to survive off of since the 1910 Mexican Revolution, people were able to live as subsistence farmers. That ability to survive was basically stolen by NAFTA, which impoverished that whole region. And also for myself, rural towns up north and the Rust Belt, this was also a huge win for corporate agriculture. And it was part of the continued urbanization and the destruction of small town America, was part of NAFTA. And then Democrats put up those walls. There was also miles and miles of fencing long before Trump got there and called for the wall. Democrats already put up fencing. And now that Trump has exacerbated this issue, also the 2009 coup in Honduras, which created mass poverty and chaos, effectively half the minimum wage under a democratic regime. This is all the continuation of the Native American people, from continent to continent, from the Mexican War, stole the land, and then didn't allow those states in the Southwest to join the United States until it had clear Anglo leadership. And then this is not talked about. There was a series of lynchings of Mexican American people for years to come, on par with levels of the lynchings of African Americans, for a certain bit of time period. So, and I think it was interesting. RCP's latest article, its headline was Trump, genocidal racist. Thinking, okay, is this news? This sounds like basic agitation of a um, of a mass organization, not the leaflet of a revolutionary party. I mean, that's obvious. Genocide and racism is one of the key aspects of U.S. imperialism for decades, for decades and hundreds of years. The United States empire has been racist and genocidal against various people. Um, I thought it was very surface level. Honestly, the Bob Avakian of 2012. Maybe he has dementia or something. I'm not sure exactly. Was I honestly some his presentation that he gave, his video presentation, actually was I thought was rather positive. It was released in 2012, and actually I worked with forces. Some of the only forces that worked with me, opposing Obama's destruction of Libya, were members of the RCP. A lot of the Trotskyist forces were cheering it on. Um, were cheering on the destruction of Libya. But it's sad to see this, and I think it's interesting. The empire has no clothes. So COVID, the way COVID, there was a lot of illusions in our society about we live in the best country in the world, lie, or we live in a democratic system. If you work hard enough, you can get what you want. When you have hundreds of thousands of people dying, you have African American and poor folks, Chicano Raza, dying at higher rates. Um, then you have police killings becoming public. It's as if the empire has no clothes. It's the system of capitalism, the inefficiency of it, the brutality of it is becoming clearer and clearer to more people as conditions worsen. And I think this divide, it's exposing the left. It's exposing the forces in the left that are more principled and the ones that buy into these movement, surface level analysis. And that would be forces like Angela Davis, Bob Avakian, even Cornel West, to an extent, that buy into the danger, somehow the danger of somehow Trump is the most evil thing that's ever happened. I mean, a lot of these forces, they have a little bit more understanding than that, but the fact they're telling people to vote for Biden instead of, I mean, they even Cornel West, he was at the movement for a People's Party, which was positive, and they're actually elected to build a new party at the movement for a People's Party, and that's interesting. What I think is, so a lot of these forces are formally connected with the Democratic Party, although they want to get outside of it. But some of them actually still voted for Biden, or telling people to vote for Biden. And they plan to build an organization, run candidates in the next 4 years, to have a candidate that was able to win. And at the end of that presentation, they went over some good organizing tips, like building a contact list, building local groups. Some of the organizing things they were doing were really positive. I mean, but there's kind of a problem with that. The Green Party has worked years to get ballot access, And I think that's why some of these forces like Ajamu Baraka, Glenn Ford, Margaret Kimberly, Chris Hedges are all still backing the Green Party. I was wondering why Chris Hedges was the only one allowed to speak, or the only person they had speak at this movement for a People's Party that endorsed the Green Party. I was wondering why weren't forces like Ajamu Baraka allowed to speak at this event, or at least asked to speak? Were they asked to speak? And if they were, did they turn it down? It's interesting. I know there's a lot of problems with the Green Party. I know my current gripe is I don't think they understand the anti-imperialist perspective like I do. I think we should have solidarity with China, solidarity with Russia. Howie Hawkins believes at least aspects of Russiagate, the lies that are being perpetuated by the Democratic Party to attack Trump for the wrong reasons, to attack Trump from the right wing instead of from the grievances that the people have. They've invented this whole Russia thing, and I think Howie Hawkins kind of goes along with that to a degree. But I think if we're going to build coalitions, this is where I draw the line. If we're going to vote for bourgeois candidates, I think if the movement for a People's Party forms a party, so and it comes to a big enough level where it rivals the Green, then I have a choice to make between the Green Party and this People's Party. And I'm not sure. I mean, if they become big enough and they truly threaten the power of the imperialist politicians, I would like to see a coalition be made with anti-imperialists supporting that organization. But until I see that, I would continue to support the Green Party, which platform message is cutting the military by 90%. Which is positive. They also have problematic views on Syria and support of the Kurds. But I mean, we can. that's other issues. But that's all later steps. I believe step one, we will accomplish nothing. And I think Chris Hedges touched on this in his speech at the Movement for a People's Party. We will accomplish nothing without mass organization, mass community, labor organizations. That is step one. We're not going to have any influence on any political process until we have grassroots mobilization, workers' power. And I think everyone watching this should be involved at some level of building workers' power, promoting scientific socialism, independent thought, questioning the narrative, engaging in democratic discussions, like I'm doing here. Maybe I'll go over a few quick comments. I think I'm going to end it. Got to get up pretty early. James Matthew Wilson, this is interesting, well spoken. Well, thank you. Thank you for watching. It's great to get local folks to watch. Itzla X, have you read any other works by William Z. Foster? I've read Towards Soviet America. Well, I listened to the audiobook while driving, and that was beautiful and inspiring. Really love the way William Z. Foster writes. He writes a lot like Stalin, which is simple, straightforward, with a depth of understanding. And that's revolutionary understanding to a T. Each one teach one. Caleb Maupin's From the Movement to the Masses, absolutely right. But I also like the Panther slogan, from the masses to the masses. Each one teach one. As soon as you have an understanding of a little bit more information of how to understand what's going on in the world, how to change it, you need to immediately teach and train everyone around you. Everyone needs to talk to their neighbors. Everyone needs to talk to their coworkers and get and spread this. We cannot be isolated in these little bubbles, any longer. We need as many people as possible to know as much as possible. And that requires, as soon as you learn something, tell somebody else. Each one teach one. Revolutionary slogans from the masses to the masses. Rory McDowell, yes, we can thank Hillary for what happened in Honduras. And Hillary Clinton was also a big part of the destruction of Libya, which is a horrible war crime. Obama, Biden backed the genocidal war of Saudi Arabia against the Yemenis people. Caleb Moffin did a good video showing the heroism of the Yemenis people resisting, referring to David and Goliath, the biblical story of the Yemenis people standing up and fighting against a horrible and worse enemy. It's the right thing to do. This is what makes great stories. Not a lot of people know this, but let's see. Disney bought Star Wars, and George Lucas came out publicly just recently saying how his main inspiration for the rebels was the Viet Cong, was anti-imperialist. Um, and this is appeal. They're selling repackaged stories of resistance back to us. Some of the evil companies like Disney. George Lucas also said, I sold my baby to the slave ship one time. I think he got drunk and said that. George Lucas, interesting character. But this idea of being inspired by small forces that did what was right and stood up against unbeatable odds and won and made the world a better place. And if you get scientific socialism, materialism, and apply it to the basis of solidarity. Solidarity. That is the core of everything I stand for is solidarity. And when one small group is able to courageously stand up and fight for themselves and improve their conditions, that is a victory for all oppressed people and all working class people. That is why I would like to see a united front against imperialism. The worst enemy of all humanity is our own government. A paraphrasing of Martin Luther King. Greatest purveyor of violence is my own government, the U.S. government. And it truly is. The main enemy of humanity is imperialism led by U.S. imperialism. Imperialism is a global economic system where a few bankers and oil companies, this 1% of the 1% of the 1%, control masses, can basically control the global economy. And you have people standing up against this. You have the Chinese Revolution, which kicked out the imperialists. And China has been able to stand tall and grow quickly and become the second largest economy. China has been able to grow 3 times the United States for the last 30 years. This is an amazing accomplishment. Putin was able to nationalize the gas and oil in Russia. And these are still capitalists. He was able to nationalize the oil and gas and rescue Russia from the absolute horrors of what the neoliberalists imposed, where in the 90s, after the fall of the Soviet Union, 10% of the population either starved or fled. Putin was able to rescue that. So, in my understanding of solidarity, an injury to one is an injury to all. A victory of any oppressed people is a victory for all of us. So when Putin kicked out the neoliberals and improved the conditions of Russia, that is one less place they could send American jobs to. China, where this is kind of ironic because a lot of jobs went there because there was this deal that China made with the West. They were able to take these jobs, use these jobs, and lift their people out of poverty. Um, and this isn't the fault of China. This is the fault of the United States and the people here. Um, but the Communist Party raising all those people out of poverty, the people that were near subsistence agricultural living, the way now there's millions of people going on vacation. All those people being raised out of poverty is a victory for the working class, a victory for everyone. Syria, Assad, and the Ba'athist Party lifting people out of poverty. This is a victory for people in the United States. Um, Iraq, Saddam, also the Ba'athist Party was able to lift people out of poverty. There's a victory for U.S. workers. One less place they can send jobs to. Iran, um, Venezuela, the amount of cultural understanding, community policing in Venezuela. These are all victories for the international proletariat. Um, Gaddafi irrigating the deserts. These are all victories. Vietnam, the David and Goliath, to be able to throw off the back of the worst empire in existence and then grow themselves up after being smashed to death. North Korea, that was bombed into the Stone Age, as high-rise buildings. These are victories for the international proletariat, including people in the United States. As the labor aristocracy is dwindling, there is no hope for U.S. workers in the imperialist system. There's no hope at all. Our only chance is to go against, stand with our brothers and sisters in all of the countries of the world, the anti-imperialist countries and governments alike, the peoples of the world and their governments that are helping to organize the people and unleash them and raise themselves out of poverty. Those are our allies. And our enemy is the Democrat, Republican, plutocracy, imperialism. U.S. imperialism leads the world global imperialist system, which the Euro socialists, the Bernie Sanders type socialism, are hooked to the imperialist system. The only reason why these systems in Europe are sustainable, which are more positive than we have here, are twofold. One is because there's socialist and communist movements in those countries keeping those in place. And number two, they're partially funded and tied to the imperialist bloc. So that is not where our inspiration should be. I'm not sure if this is Christian, but you should be judged by how you treat the least amongst you. I think that's a Christian fable. Solidarity, an injury to one is an injury to all. Apply this on a global scale. And I think the correct movement, the correct action, is a united front against imperialism. So when people tell me to vote for Biden, who is just the opposite coin of the imperialist system, which is the greatest enemy that humanity has ever faced, that is us voting against our interests. And a lot of these forces that are tied in to this more movementism, kind of like fake left phrasing, the way they look upon rural workers, Republican voters, the way Hillary Clinton called people deplorable, working class people. These are people that voted for Obama. A lot of the rural voters who voted for Trump voted for Sanders. And I think it's also true. I think racism does permeate our society. I think the people who voted Trump were either okay with racism or ignorant of it to an extent. But to demonize workers, it really plays into the divide and conquer method, where they're pitting. They're using the rural and urban divide essentially, The Democrat Republican Party has always been, throughout its history, regardless of the change of it going from the Democrats being the racist party, the more overtly racist. Before, the Democrats were the more overtly racist party. The Democrats were the ones that, Lincoln was a radical abolitionist. Lincoln, wanted to keep the Union, but radical abolitionists helped start, and Marxists helped start the Republican Party. But the Republican Party has been a rural um, party since its beginning, and Democrats have kind of been the opposite. They've kind of maintained the cities. But it's almost like they're using the rural-urban divide, cultural divide, simply to divide and conquer the working class. Um, they're pitting us against each other. When we have common interests, common class interests, we're all being first. I think a lot of like the issue of drugs and opioids, mass incarceration. You notice what they did to Black America in the 80s with Oliver North, the CIA introducing crack cocaine into the Black community, poor community. Ronald Reagan, the Iran Contra scandal. They introduced drugs in the community. They criminalized those drugs. They used mass incarceration to legally discriminate against employment opportunities, legally discriminate voting, legally discriminate on gun rights. A lot of that has happened in rural America through the opioid crisis. What first happened in the Black communities happening, and this is nothing new. This goes back to the Opium Wars, where the British imperialists forced the Chinese against their will to buy opium, narcotic, heroin, the heroin epidemic. That's a derivative of opioids, which is interesting. But we live in a decaying empire. We have a shrinking labor aristocracy. It is becoming more apparent to more people day by day that something has to change. I'm seeing new voices and understandings of groups and people that I've never seen before. Young people supporting socialism in a country that was blighted with the absolute offense of McCarthyism for years. We're robbed of having local communist parties, socialist parties, because of the long-term effects of McCarthyism. McCarthyism is still being used, even amongst progressive circles, like the Movement for a People's Party has elements of McCarthyism and anti-socialism. There's even anti-socialism within the Green Party. That was part of the divide. Part of the wing that was opposing Howie Hawkins was because Howie Hawkins was close with the socialist, with the Socialist Party, and there was anti-socialist elements within the Green Party, which were against that. And I think that's a positive development that's happening with Howie Hawkins, which is saying that the Green Party is explicitly socialist. All right. I've gone over a lot. Maybe I'll check up on a few of these comments and I'll go ahead and end it. Arturo Rivera, Arturo Rivera, what you do to the least of me, you do unto me, your Lord. Yes, that's Jesus Christ. And I think that's beautiful. If you apply that phrase, what you do to the least of me, you do unto me, your Lord. Apply this to the system of imperialism. Apply this to native people whose countries are run by warlords and people propped up by CIA coups, stuff like that, and the indigenous people kept in poverty, indigenous people dying on the border. Apply this to how Africa is kept poor, apply this to Yemen, the genocide, the famine, people living in starvation, and this is our own government causing. This is massive evil. This is massive evil. This is our own government is keeping whole regions in poverty for decades through sanctions, through mass bombing campaigns, through covert actions, through coups, and this is throughout the world. The coup in Honduras, the recent coup in Bolivia, they're mass murdering indigenous people, fascist, proto-Christian. This is a Christian fascist. So I'm quoting Jesus. What do what you do to the least of me, you do unto me. There's a Christian fascist in Bolivia killing indigenous people that our government put into power, that we pay taxes to. That if you vote Democrat or Republican, you are voting for this evil. Giving illusions and either the Democrat or Republican Party. You are promoting the political system that makes this possible. We need an insurgency of ideas, an insurgency of democratic debate, an insurgency of renewed faith in humanity and higher things. We need to fight to give all power to